Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Bet Yosef Shiur. Today, we will be continuing Siman Peited, learning Seif Gimel. As always, our goal is to understand the bottom line of the Sugya and the Gemara, and then progress through the Bet Yosef in order to understand the Psak of the Shulchan Aruch, allowing our listeners to open up any of the Sefarim in the Aharonim and to understand their words, Halacha leMa'aseh. This Shiur is tailored to be listened to even if you don't have a Bet Yosef in front of you, but ultimately, my goal is that you should have the inspiration to open up, learn it inside, as nothing is like the real thing. Today we'll discuss what is allowed and not allowed to be done in the morning before Tefillat Shaharit. The Gemara Masechet Berachot, Daf Yud Dalet, says as follows: Amar Rab Idi bar Avin, Amar Rab Yitzhak bar Ashiyan, Asur lo la'adam la'asot hafatzav kodem shipalel, shneimar tzedek lefanav yahalech v'yasem l'derech be'amav. Tzedek is his tefillah, and after his matzdik borei olam, he can continue on his ways. That's the one line in the Gemara. The rest is explained in the Rishonim. The Bet Yosef starts off by quoting the Tumat edition, who says that he saw many medaktekim, scrupulous Jews, that have a custom not to go to work in the morning until they come to the Bet Knesset, and then they say shirot and tishbahot, and then only then they would go and tend to their errands, do what they needed to do, and then return to the synagogue to pray Shaharit. The Tumat edition says that this is an incorrect practice because the Gemara's intention is not that a person should pray any kind of prayer before doing their activities or their work. Rather, the intention is that they pray the Amidah, the Shemoneh Esrei, which is the Ikar Avodah in front of Borei Olam. And therefore, he should first pray the Amidah, obviously with the whole tefillah, and then go take care of what he needs to do. The Darkei Moshe comments and says, according to the Orchot Chaim mentioned earlier, this isn't the problem. What's he referring to? In our first Shiur in Siman Peitet, we mentioned that one is not allowed to say hello or shalom to their friend before Shaharit. However, if this person said Berachot, the Orchot Chaim says it's sufficient to allow you to say shalom to your friend before prayers, and therefore saying Berachot, it permits you saying shalom. The Darkei Moshe says that both of these two topics are similar in fashion, and therefore the custom to go to the shul and say the shirot is not so problematic. However, if we think about it for a moment, the Tumat edition has a justification. There's a clear distinction between getting involved in one's activities, especially business activities, that's more engaging and time-consuming than simply greeting a friend. And therefore, saying Berachot would not allow someone to do business activities or errands, but it would allow them to say Shalom. Now we can understand why the Bet Yosef didn't connect both subjects, even though he just brought the Orchot Chaim just a few lines earlier. If we look at the Shulchan Aruch in Seif Gimel, Maran reads as follows: Asur lo litasek b'tzrakav or lelech laderech ad shipalel tefilat shemoneh esrei. Maran adds the words Tefilat Shemoneh Esrei. The Tur just said Ad Shipalel. Maran's adding this point to be posiklet to Tumat edition that Shirot and Tishbahot is not enough, and a person has to pray the Amidah before doing what they need to do. The Rama, in his note, said V'yesh Mekilin, noting that there's a machloket. There are other opinions that are more lenient. V'yesh Mekilin L'achar she'amru miksat berachot kodem she'amru Baruch she'amar v'tov le'achmir bazeh. The Rama says you could be lenient, like the lenient opinions to say Berachot. However, he does add that it's good to be Mahmir, like the Tumat edition. And many times in Shulchan Aruch, the Havahot of the Rama, he is Mahmir like the Tumat edition. Clearly, we see from both Maran and the Rama what Maran's opinion is. Maran is saying Shemoneh Esrei. The Rama learned that Maran is Mahmir, and therefore he says V'yesh Mekilin, noting a Mahloket. We move on to another point mentioned in the Torah. Lo yelech lidarko. The Bet Yosef brings the Mahari Abu Hav, who, by the way, was Rabbi Yitzhak Abu Hav, was called the Gaon from Castilla, who lived in Spain in the generation before the Bet Yosef, the late 1400s. He actually wrote on various topics, including notes on the Torah or the Haim, which the Bet Yosef often quotes, and also other works on Torah, on Talmud, on Tanakh, as well as Derashot. Here, the Bet Yosef and the Mahari Abu Hav argue on the intention of the Torah. Mahari Abu Hav explains that there's an argument brought later in the Siman, discussing how a person must who must travel before sunrise should pray? Should it pray at home after Alot while standing, which is the proper way to pray the Amidah while standing, or pray on the way at the proper time, Netzach Hama, while sitting down? The psak of the Torah and its father, the Rosh, is to pray at home while standing, and that's why the Torah says here to pray before one goes on his way. We'll return to this discussion at the end of the Siman. But Mahari Abu Hav says that it's lo bedituk. It's not proper for the Torah to bring this discussion here and to bring his psak here, since it's out of place and we're not getting involved in that discussion right now. The Beit Yosef argues, and he explains that the Torah's explanation is proper. He says that there's a big distinction between our halakha of what is a person is allowed to do before Shaharit and the halakha at the end of the Siman. At this point, we're discussing a situation where a person is not that stressed to go on his way. Rather, he wants to get on with his day. He wants to be early, and therefore the Torah says it's improper to go on your way because it's a controlled situation, and therefore he should pray first and then go on his way. However, at the end of the Siman, we're discussing a situation where he's under duress, where the shayara, which is the train or the plane of yesteryear, is leaving, and therefore he has to make a decision what to do. This situation is not in his hands. And the Torah is teaching us that just like a person cannot do business before prayer, he should not go on his way before prayer, as they're both in his hands. The Beit Yosef brings a proof for this from the Talmud, that like it says in the Gemara in Berachot, which is the same Gemara that we started the Siman with. Ve'amar Rav Adi bar Avi and Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Ishan, Berachot in Talid, Kol mitpalel ve'achar kach yotzeh laderech, HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh lo hafetzav, shne'emar tzedek lefanav ve'alef ve'yasim laderech pe'amav. The Gemara uses the same pasuk to teach us both dinim, and the Beit Yosef says that the statement can be understood in two ways. And the Beit Yosef explains that it doesn't mean that if a person goes on his way before prayer, he won't merit divine assistance in his dealings, but from the letter of the law, it is allowed and there's no prohibition. Rather, the Beit Yosef explains that there is an isur, since he's performing his activities before he engages in prayer, and that is an isur, says the Beit Yosef, and that's what he wants to learn from this Gemara. In the Shulchan Aruch, Maran just says, Asur litasek b'tzarchav o lelech laderech ad sheyipalel. And when Maran brings this halakha, bringing the Lashon of the Torah, he's basically saying that he agrees with his explanation of the Torah and not with Mahari Abu Hav. When we see that the Beit Yosef realizes that there's an argument, and in the Shulchan Aruch, he brings it how he explained it, and he justifies the Torah's psak. We see that Maran is pointing out this idea that it's asur, like he says here, asur lelech laderech, like he explained that the Gemara is oser a person. It's not just a good thing to do. It's an isur to lelech laderech when you could pray previously. And we should understand in the Shulchan Aruch that we're talking about a non-dire situation, and therefore a person should pray. If the Mahari Abu Hav would write the Shulchan Aruch, he would not bring this halakha, because according to the Mahari Abu Hav, it's not relevant. In a few words, in this Seif Gimel, we see how important it is to understand the Beit Yosef as a basis for the understanding of the Shulchan Aruch. The next discussion in our Seif is eating or drinking before Shaharit. The Gemara Berachot Yud reads as follows: Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Bar Rabbi Hanina, Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Kol ha'ochel v'shoteh ve'achar kach mipalel alav ha'katuv omer ve'oti ishlachta acharei gavecha ad tekre gavecha ele ke'echa. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu לאחר שנתקעה זה קיבל עליו או מלכות שמיים, which basically means that a person cannot eat or drink before they pray, and it is a haughty act, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels that it's not proper that he does this and to accept O Malchut Shamayim after he's eaten and drink. And then it's important to note that in the language of Hazal and the Poskim, Tefillah is constantly referred to as Kabbalat O Malchut Shamayim. It reminds us that our prayers need to be heartfelt, not by rote, have a deep feeling, as when a person prays, they are accepting the fact that Hashem controls the world, Kabbalat O Malchut Shamayim. The literal meaning of the pasuk is that people are focusing on Avodah Zarah, ignoring Borei Olam, and sort of throwing Borei Olam behind their backs or their bodies. Gavecha. Hazal explained that you could change the language to mean holiness. Ge'echa. Both Maria Abu Hab and the Beit Yosef give explanations why Hazal changed the language. Maria Abu Hab explains that from the literal explanation of the pasuk, even drinking would be asur, because it is also a necessity of the body. But Hakamim changed it so that only holiness, ga'ava, is asur, and therefore one would be allowed to drink water. The Beit Yosef gives a slightly different angle, and he explains that the prohibition here is midrabanan, rabbinic in nature, and therefore minat Torah, one is allowed to eat and drink before prayers. But since it's the Rabbanan, Hachamim have a power to control the stringency of their decree, and therefore they felt that it's only necessary to prohibit something done in an arrogant manner. Therefore, as with many Isurei de Rabbanan, Hachamim connect the Isur to a pasuk, not to connote that it's a Isur from the Torah, but to connect to show that there is a source in the Pesukim for this concept, and this is known as Asmachta. Here too, Chachamim are looking for a pasuk that highlights this Isur, and therefore it shows this pasuk. But since the pshat of the pasuk seems to prohibit even water, so therefore they explain the language in order to highlight the Isur that has to do with arrogance. The Beit Yosef brings three opinions on what can be consumed before prayers. Firstly, he brings the opinion of the Avi Ezri, and the Torah brings it as well, that water and any food that's for medical reasons are allowed, since the issue here is expressing ga'ava before prayers. Water and medical needs are clearly not for personal enjoyment, and therefore it's allowed. The Mordechai and Hagot Mamriot also hold this way. The Sefer HaMitzvot also holds halachically the same way, and he allows water, but he says there's a different reasoning behind it. He says that it's better to drink prior to the tefillah in order that someone shouldn't be so dry, shouldn't be dehydrated, and shouldn't be uncomfortable during the prayers. The Kolbo, however, argues. He says that even drinking water is prohibited, and he says that the reason is that a person is supposed to approach Hashem in the tefillah with a sense of need, and a sense that only Hashem can fulfill that need. However, if a person has already quenched his thirst, so therefore he doesn't need the water, and he's not seeking his needs, and therefore his reliance on Hashem sort of dropped a level, and therefore it's asur. The Beit Yosef also brings that the Zorchot Chaim, which agrees with the Shita. Nevertheless, Maria Abu Hab decides that the halakha is like the Avi Ezri. The Beit Yosef says that is the correct halakha. Hachinaktinan. The words hachinaktinan literally mean that's what we grab, that's what we're posek, and in our vernacular, that's how we roll. Maran reads, Velo lechol velo lishtot, avamayim mutar lishtot, kodem tefillah. Regarding tea, coffee, with milk, without sugar, and other beverages and other foods, check out your local aharonim. You have Kaf HaHayim, or the Tzion, Mishnah Berurah, Yekul Yosef, Halakha Berurah. Today there's many Mishnah Berurahs with opinions on the side, Ayin Shah. Until now we've discussed drinking prior to Shaharit during the weekdays. But what about Shabbat, when there's a chiyuv to say Kiddush? The Torah and the Beit Yosef bring two opinions, and it's a two-way machloket. First, we have the Avi Ezri and Rabbeinu Tuvia, which are brought by the Maria Abu Hab, as well as the Tashbetz, brought in the Chot Haim, and they all hold, since there's an obligation to say Kiddush before eating or drinking on Shabbat morning, then this heter is only for the weekdays and not for Shabbat. However, the Torah writes that his father, the Rosh, would drink because he held that the obligation to say Kiddush does not begin with daybreak. Rather, it only begins once you have prayed. The Aharonim discuss whether they mean Shaharit or Musaf. Sounds like it's talking about Shaharit, but it is a discussion, I believe, in the Rishonim or the Aharonim. The Beit Yosef says that the Rosh is the correct opinion. Seemingly, it doesn't say why. Seemingly agrees with the Rosh's logic. However, it's a little bit odd. The Rosh is sort of a minority opinion. However, the Beit Yosef adds a very interesting point. He said that if we learn the laws of Kiddush and Hilchot Shabbat, there are opinions that hold that some can even drink before Kiddush. Now, we might not hold like those opinions. It's the understanding of the Magid Mishneh. It's also the Ra'avad. We might not hold like those opinions. However, because there are opinions that are more lenient, we can definitely rule like the Rosh here, since The Rosh is basically the middle opinion of the three opinions. As Maran reads, Mutar lishtot kodem tefillah, mayim mutar lishtot kodem tefillah, ben behol o ben Shabbat v'yom tov, v'chen ochalim u'mashkin l'refuah mutar. Thank you for joining us. Bezrat Hashem, we will continue with Siman Pei Tet Seif Dalet in our next Shiur.